Hoggarth on Mix 93.8.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Spheres of Influence. Every week on Tuesday and Thursday, going out on Mix 93.8 FM and also out on podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hoggarth. And generally speaking on the show, we talk about everything related to do with the world of change, how the world is being impacted by technology, social media, mobile, all of these amazing things. And business, the very nature of business is changing, and it's also, of course, impacted by other factors like the economy, the general atmosphere of business in the world. And so what I like to do on the show is to bring in guests who can shed some light into what's going on and hopefully give some ideas, some tips, some things we should be thinking about to do our businesses better. And my guest in studio today is Kim Meredith. She is the author of a book called Dealonomics, and she is the founder of a company called the Dealmaker company. She's all about deal making. How do you make a deal? And if you are alive in this world, whether you're in sales or not, or any part of whatever you are doing in this world, at some point you are making deals. It's the very nature of human interaction. So first of all, Kim, hello and welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks very much.
All right, Kim, well, let's start off with, well, tell us a bit more about you and this. Why do you care about deal making? Why are you in the business of deal making? What is it all about?
Sure. I think like a lot of people, you have an idea of where you're going to end up when you leave school, and life never works out quite as planned. I didn't set out to say, I'm going to be a deal maker. I sort of made it up as I went along. And the more involved I got in business, I had some fantastic mentors who taught me huge amounts about business. And the more involved I got, the more interested I was in how deals were put together. And I had unwittingly, I would love to say it was all design, but it was more chance that I'd started gathering skills in selling particularly and negotiating. And those two together were ultimately what would combine to help me become a deal maker. And as I moved up the hierarchy in organizations and got more and more involved in deals, I realized that the selling and negotiating, no matter how good I thought I was, wasn't enough. And I set about trying to understand what it is that makes an excellent expert deal maker. And there was nothing available in the market to teach me this. So I decided, after having spent many years in the corporate world, that I wanted to transfer this knowledge to help other people get better deals, get quicker deals, get more deals. And it's become my passion. So I've been running the Dealmaker company now for over 10 years and loved every minute of it.
All right. Well, it sounds interesting. I mean, okay, Dealmaker. Immediately you're, from an emotional point of view, you go, oh, we're going to make deals. But how is it different? What you call deal making, how is that different to just sales?
Selling is a critical component, but deal making is more complex. You know, when you go and you sell, your objective is to influence the other person. You talk about spheres of influence. You cannot do that without having some form of sales skills. But it's not enough to put a deal together. So, for example, I was buying a company in Germany, and I was given £5 million, which at the time sounded like a lot of money. And the company
it's even more money now.
The company wanted 40 million euros. Now, no matter which way you cut it, that was never going to translate on any exchange rate. So it was how to structure a deal that gave them what they wanted ultimately, but on my budget of £5 million. And you have to bring in lots of experts. For example, there's ways to leverage German tax laws that will enable you to pay more into the hands of the person who's selling the company. But I knew nothing of this. I still don't. But a proper deal maker will look at all the facets of how to put the transaction together and pull in the experts as and when they're needed. It's a bit like the mum in the cupboard, you know that advert. You bring them in when they need it, but you put them back in the cupboard because they can really destroy your deal if they start getting involved in aspects of it in which they are not expert. So it's a juggling act.
And why is it? I mean, why do you think it's important? I mean, it's very interesting to me that there would be a need for it. You know, there you say, okay, someone who will tell you how to put a deal together. Why do you need to be doing what you're doing?
The more deals you can, the economy's bad. I think everybody's feeling it, and the more deals you can do, the more business you can transact. It's not just about volumes, though. It's about doing more deals more profitably to increase your revenues, to protect your profit margins, but also your personal wealth. You know, so when we talk about deals, it's not just the big mergers and acquisitions type deals. It's the smaller ones that impact you in your everyday life. And if you understand a deal in its complexity, you can get a better deal than somebody who's just trying to convince the other person to give them what they want.
Okay, so then on a more practical level, how are you doing this? The Dealmaker company, how are you transferring that knowledge? How are you helping people make better deals?
We do a lot of it through training. We are aligned with Henley Business School, and we work with Henley to offer open programs. Or people book directly with us. But more and more, people want us to help them, not just sit in the classroom and do the cases and the workshops. They actually want that skill then applied to their real deals. And we try and bring that into the classroom as much as possible. But too many deals are happening, and the people that we do work with contract us to consult to them. Prefer not to be the lead negotiator, because if it all goes wrong, of course, I can destroy the deal. But I want people to know how to do it themselves. So I'm more the guide in the background, the coach. To say Tiger Woods has a coach, I would like to be the coach to somebody who's world class.
Okay.
Because you can create more deal makers that way, rather than being the one that enables the deal. But the more competent you are at putting a deal together, the more the other person gets what they want, but you get what you want as well. I can spot an unskilled deal maker at 100 paces, because their first line of action is to say no.
Yes.
Or to try tricks like face you into the sun, cut off 2 inches of your chair legs. You know, that's silly, and it doesn't get you a better deal. So a skilled deal maker will be able to and build long-term relationships through giving the other person what they want.
What is interesting as well to me is the fact that there are certain topics like sales, and obviously now, you know, I'm learning through you, like making deals and how you go about that. But there are certain things that there always seems to be a need for people to know how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not one of those skills like, okay, we've taught the world how to do this. There's no need for trainers anymore. But sales is one, and clearly the fact that because the world shifts and changes, and how we sold things to people in the 1950s or the 1970s is we couldn't sell things to people in that way, or we couldn't structure deals. We couldn't get sort of that win-win or agreement in the same way today.
Yeah.
So how have you seen that evolving? I mean, your business has been around for 10 years.
Yeah.
In that 10 years, has it evolved just in that period of time?
It has. I've seen massive influences, and it's a lot through your pet subject of social media, of digital information, that has changed the nature of the information you can get. If you look at a deal, or let's look at a deal maker, starting from your first question, was a deal maker is somebody who has selling skills. You've got to have it. They've got negotiating skills. They've got the ability to communicate, and they've got the ability to understand and adjust power. Now, how you do that, how you interact with the other party, has changed dramatically in 10 years, because a lot more and more it's done over a social media platform. But the beauty of social media is it gives you the information that makes your communication more meaningful, gives you information that helps you to understand your power relative to the other person. And I'm not saying take your power out to the win-win, win-lose stuff. I'm saying use it to get the deal you want, giving the other guy what he wants at the same time. So in the 1950s, 1970s, it was win-lose. You think of your traditional negotiation of management and unions. It's gone backwards, I'm afraid, in this country of late. But we were making fantastic progress. But in that era, it was win-lose. For one party to win, the other guy had to lose. And then I think in the sort of 80s, we got a bit soft. And it was about win-win. But win-win is hard to measure. It's like you go shopping for something, you buy it, you feel fabulous, big purchase, great. And the next day you think, oh, my goodness, what have I done?
Yes. So it was win-win yesterday, today
soft,
not so much.
Yeah. And people just felt good because it feels good to get a deal, to actually walk out with a transaction that's closed. But you've got to look at it the next day and the next week and say, is this the value I wanted from the transaction? So more and more, we're talking about value, not win-win.
Yes.
What's the value to the other guy? What's the value to you? And it's not, don't think it's just measurable in financial terms or quantity. It's qualitative as well, because emotion plays a huge role in any deal.
Okay. And now what are a lot of what you're talking seems very high level, and clearly you've spent a lot of time in that space, the mergers, acquisitions, very, very high level deals. But what about, how does this impact on the small guy, small business, 5 people in a business trying to get along in the world, trying to do their thing? Is there relevance of all of this to them?
Yeah, a deal. I mean, if you look in the dictionaries, you're not going to find a huge amount of help. Deals and dealing is often associated with gambling.
Yes.
And something slightly dodgy if you're doing a deal. Yeah. And it's not like that anymore. Deals, most of the deals we'll do in our lives are for us. And they can be anything from small things like getting your kid to go to bed. Children, if you want to know how to do a deal, just watch a 6-year-old. Which says to me, we're born with these skills. You said they are integral to how we function as people, but we're born with them, we lose them, but that's another conversation. But it can be something as mundane as getting the teenager to wash the car or clean the room out, yes. Or it can be negotiating your salary. It can be negotiating a contract. It can be negotiating your divorce settlement. And I'm talking about negotiating, but it's in the context of the deal as a whole. But negotiation is absolutely central to the deal as much as selling is.
All right, and then what are the things that haven't changed? I mean, I talk a lot about things, how they're evolving, how they're changing, how amazing it all is, but there are always elements that, I guess, fundamentals that the way they are expressed might evolve a little bit, but you're never going to do away with them. And what are those in negotiating, in deal making?
In deal making, if we start with the easy one, selling, which is one of the components, it's your ability to convince and influence the other person. And if you have a relationship with them, if you understand a little bit about the person, it's much easier to interact with them. That's a fundamental that hasn't changed. Companies have tried to change it, by putting together salesmen with a buyer who has never met. But ultimately, they will still form a relationship. So central to any selling is relationship. But where it becomes an art rather than just a basic skill is with whom, at what level, what message do you talk to them? And it's about the value to that person you're talking to at that moment in time relative to their position. Negotiating is trading. Now, I often ask on my courses, what's the world's oldest profession? You can imagine the answer.
Yes.
But it's not, because the answer is just it's a subset of trading. Trading is giving to get. If you give me this sheep, you can have this corn, for example.
Yes.
And other institutions just fall in under that. So that's never going to change. A negotiator is not somebody who says no. A negotiator is somebody who barters. I tend to call people who say no and who are obstructive bullies or unskilled deal makers.
All right. Well, remarkably, the more we seem to talk about how the world is changing in technology, we also seem to be talking more and more about relationships. And it is these two things together. You can't hide behind technology in order to do the work of negotiation and relationship for you. At some point, you've got to know how to have a conversation with people, how to relate to people, and how to build something up. So you've written a book, Dealonomics, which I assume talks about pretty much what we've been talking about now, but in far greater detail. I've got a copy of it here with me, and it's around 200 pages long. So clearly there's a lot of detail, a lot of content, a lot of amazing content in here on how to make a deal, how to build those relationships and structure a deal that works for everybody. So where can people get hold of this book?
Dealonomics, you can get it at exclusives if you want hard copies still. I'm sure Esther also has, or online, Amazon or Takealot. I went overseas recently and forgot my books at home, going to see some customers, and had to order my own book of Amazon. Or otherwise just phone the office, the Dealmaker company.
Okay, so if you want to know how to make a deal, how to negotiate, how to understand the dynamics of relationships in a way that you can make a deal, get a copy of Dealonomics. It's by Kim Meredith. So get onto the Google or Amazon and get a copy for yourself, or get hold of the Dealmaker company directly if you would like help in learning how to make deals. Kim Meredith, thank you so much for being here today, and I think this has been very helpful.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And you've been listening to Spheres of Influence.